Hey everybody, welcome to our review of This Is Us Season 5, Episode 6, entitled Birth Mother, also entitled the Give Sterling K. Brown His Emmy episode.
Yeah, this was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it.
They promoted it as extraordinary. This was not network promo guy being hyperbolic. Like, this is a legitimately great episode. Like, there's a lot of stuff to talk through. There's some things that, there's parts of it that I think that some people may have enjoyed more than others, but isn't that often the case with every episode of TV ever?
Yeah, I might have a couple of hot takes on this that you guys may not agree with, and if you don't, let me know in the comments. I'm always up for a good discussion.
Yeah, but I think overall, we're both coming into this video, like, super, super psyched with a lot of what they did, the performances, the story. Let's get ready to dive in here, and before we do, we're kind of at like the diving board right now, about to jump right into this episode, but be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our dives into This Is Us reviews, all that good stuff.
Yeah, we're going to be here after every episode. We're also going to have lots of, sort of theories and discussions. There's lots of videos coming to this channel, so make sure you are subscribed.
Can I just say, first and foremost, like, I think like 90% of the fandom, I don't know if I'm overestimating here, but we all sort of entered this episode sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop. That was, okay, Randall's got some sort of secret half-sibling he doesn't know about. There's some...
I was really hoping for a half-sibling. Like, you guys know how much I've been hoping for it. I have 2 half-siblings. This is a show that's all about different family relationships. I was like, oh man, if they bring in a half-sibling, this is going to be really cool for someone like me, because half-siblings, not really a lot on TV.
Yeah, I totally thought that was coming, especially since we had seen before High's granddaughter, and I was trying to like put the pieces together in my head, but it's almost like the surprise at the end of this is that for Randall, there was never like this big one huge like, oh my gosh, the entire walls of This Is Us are being blown wide open. It was more about the emotion and less about like the shock value.
For me, the thing that was really interesting is after seeing that picture of High and Laurel, I thought that their relationship happened after everything was going on with William and Randall and all of that. But so it was a surprise to see that their love affair was before that.
It was equally surprising, I think, with the way that he was holding her in that photo. We all thought, okay, Laura must be pregnant. They're really going down this road of the half-sibling.
Yeah, listen, that photo was too fuzzy. Whoever director of photography was on that needed to make it a little bit sharper, because him behind her, holding her sort of around her stomach, and it was just kind of like, oh, fuzzy or whatever. It looked like she might be pregnant.
This has sent us down a worse rabbit hole than the ovulation kit versus pregnancy test debate.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I legitimately thought that's where things were going here, but at least we can give This Is Us a little bit of credit. At the start of the episode, they addressed the pandemic, that they were tested. It's like, okay, thank you guys for at least making it seem as though Randall and Beth went down there safely.
Also, Shy McBride.
How awesome was that he's randomly in the episode? We had no idea.
I had no idea. We love him.
Yeah.
We love him. So seeing him on the episode was a surprise. I didn't see him anywhere. I was like, oh my goodness, he's in this episode. I'm IMDb'ing it. It's not mentioned on there anywhere. So I don't know if they were just like, okay, we got Shy McBride. We're going to keep it a secret so that people like us who are like fans of his and really like him are just like, oh, it's him. And he was excellent, of course. He always is.
I have loved him since Pushing Daisies a long time ago. He's such a fascinating guy.
Yeah, he is.
We did an interview once with him on the site, and I could listen to him tell stories. Like, his stories are even better than High's stories on the show.
He is. He's a really fascinating guy.
He was Laurel's father in this episode, and, it was interesting seeing High sort of kick off this story, because like you sort of said, I did not expect going into this that it was, the High and Laurel love affair began before Laurel ever knew William, and it sort of changed my perception of Laurel a little bit in my head.
This love story was wonderful, and that is one of the things that I really like about the show, and I think you guys are invested in too, of course, is the Rebecca and Jack love story. It's just this wonderful, pure love. And then here we are with Laurel and Hai, wonderful, pure love, to the point that after everything that happened to her, when they do see each other again and he's remarried, just a wave to each other for years and years and years afterwards was just like that pull and that heartbreak and that longing, but being respectful. I was just like, it's such a good story.
One of my favorite parts of the whole episode was when Hai was having a discussion right before he offered to cook her the fish in the past, and he was trying to explain how he remembered her. And he was like, ah! And
he dunked his head in a bucket.
Like, I was all in on young Hai.
He
Like,
was great.
That actor was really, really good. And their relationship, it was so sweet and so innocent in a way. And it almost, there was kind of this Romeo and Juliet quality to it where, Laurel's father was kind of very much, this is the person you're going to be with. You can't be with anyone else.
Yeah.
The other part of this that I think we both sort of analyzed and predicted in our previews leading up to this was Laurel going to prison for a certain period of time.
Yeah, so we finally learned, and Randall learned, why she didn't end up going to look for him. So after she overdosed, she was charged with possession. Her lawyer told her to plead guilty, and because it was her first offense, thought that the judge would, be a little lenient on her, and put her away for 5 years for that. 5 years. So, by the time she got out, we even saw her pick up the phone to call her dad, but there's was just this shame and guilt and just bad feelings about everything that happened. Then she's in prison for all this time carrying that. By the time she did get out to go see her aunt, you could see how much guilt she was carrying around. And guilt and fear are a really powerful thing. They can hold on to you, because I'm sure there are people out there that are like, okay, well, once she got out, why didn't she look for Randall then? That's why. And that is a very believable reason. I think there's a lot of us out there that have carried one thing with us, or two things, or a whole bunch of things that we just feel guilt about or feel fear about. And we just don't know how to get past it, so we don't.
All of this was heartbreaking. All of this, what happens where, she doesn't get a chance to see her baby. The justice system part of this is heartbreaking. This whole, you serve 5 years for a low-level drug offense. This is still happening, by the way, to black men and black women in this country especially. And it is ridiculous.
Yes.
And it is ridiculous that Laurel, who, from everything we've seen here, is this caring person who has had this love story and has gone through so much, she basically gets her whole life taken away from her.
Yeah, for one small thing that happened that ended up affecting her, where she did end up ODing. And it was, William told the story, when she found out that she was pregnant with Randall, she was completely clean the whole time. It was after he was born, that she did this thing to deal with the pain. It was sort of like a lapse of judgment. And then she's going to be put away for 5 years for this. It's like you said, it is still happening today, and it is ridiculous.
Yeah, and all of that is terrible. And then you go into the heartbreak and the fear and the shame of her having to carry around something that she's already being just over-penalized for to the umpteenth degree, and because they have sort of reinforced that feeling in her head that look at how wrong you were.
Yep.
It changes her entire life. It changes her ability to go and find Randall. And all of this, I was really worried entering this episode that it wasn't going to be believable enough why Laurel stopped looking for her son, because we would think, oh, you'd do anything to find, your child. But I believed it. They did such a good job of painting why it was believable.
Yeah, like I said, guilt, fear, shame. This is a lot stronger than I think a lot of people may think that it is. That it's like, oh, but you've gotten out and whatever. But she was just still punishing herself for this, over and over and over again, to the fact that even her aunt was like, oh, you got to call your parents. No, I can't do that either. She's just piling it on herself.
One other thing I appreciated the writers did was Randall at certain points in this story that I was telling, he was starting to get a little salty here and there. Like before we got to this part, he was like, I came down here to learn the truth about my mother, and instead I'm getting the high romantic love story.
Yeah.
And he was just like, hi, you are not my father. Can we get to that sort of part now? And of course, it's sort of that narrative perspective where the narrator is always going to sort of spin things, and High's story, it's going to be about High, and I'm sure High probably didn't ask Laurel a ton of questions about William and all of that because he's not, a main character in his own story.
Yeah, and when they first met, there was a bit of a language barrier, so they were also trying to teach each other how they were able to communicate a bit better. And we don't know exactly how long they were together, but they were together long enough for them to be sort of the loves of each other's lives, to the point that when we got to the end of Laurel's life and she was, said that she had cancer, and his wife had passed, that then he was with her for the last few years of her life.
Yeah, and all of that I think was just so tender and so just well done, seeing their communication, seeing what each one of them meant to the other. And there's also just the charm in the fact that, these two worked at the same market seemingly for such a long period of time. Yeah. It just adds sort of like a quintessential Americana quality to this episode. And that's why I think This Is Us is so popular. It's like, this sounds like such like an old man thing to say, but it's like, you don't see stuff like this on TV. I don't know why I just turned into Memphis from Big Brother, but like, you don't see stuff like this on TV very much anymore.
No, you don't.
It was, I think, really, really nice to sort of see all this come around, to see Randall have these answers, and, High, understanding more why High was so intent on telling Randall the truth, because he was sort of fulfilling a promise that he made to Laurel before her death.
Yeah, and what was great about this is because for the past, season and a half, we've seen Randall really struggling, sort of, after he lost William, and he was struggling with everything that was then happening to his mom, Rebecca, and then then he had his fight with Kevin, knowing sort of a further back sort of, who helped create him and was his birth mother, that this really helped him a lot. I mean, a lot, to the point that at the end of the episode, he actually picked up the phone to call Kevin and was like, I am ready to move on from this. I want to call Kevin. Here we are. And now we're going to talk a bit about some of the stuff that didn't work for me.
Let's start with the Kevin part of it, because I heard a little sneak peek of your take on this.
Yeah, okay, so listen. When this whole thing happened where Madison was like, no, go to Vancouver, and he was like, listen, we're kind of far along in the pregnancy here. And she's like, it'll be fine. You got to go up there. You have a 2 weeks quarantine. You'll, shoot for 2 weeks, and then you'll be back in 4 weeks. Twins typically come early. I have 2 sets in my life. I have my twin cousins and 2 twins that are friends, and they all came early. This is pretty typical. So sending him away when that is a big possibility, why didn't Dr. Horse tell you that this is a possibility? He's supposed to be there to tell you, by the way, they are probably going to be born early, so get ready for it. Tell Kevin.
Where is Dr. Horse, by the way? We saw this dude once at the end of last season, and now he's just gone.
Yeah. So then we have Randall calling Kevin, who's like, oh, Madison's, she's in labor, and I'm driving down from Vancouver, so I got no time to talk. Listen, I've done this drive before. It is 22 hours, bruh. You have time to talk. There is lots of time to talk.
I think that is the first bruh in the history of the channel. But okay, this is the thing here, is that Randall has a soothing voice. Sterling K. Brown, if you're out there, if you're watching this video, if you want to just talk me to sleep at one night, you are so soothing, I would appreciate it. It's like, if I'm freaking out, I would want Randall Pearson to talk to me and sort of calm me down. I know they've been through a lot, but like you said, Kevin's got all the time in the world at this moment.
22-hour drive. That is how long it is from Vancouver back to LA. He has time.
Yeah, like, I don't know if he's calling other people or doing other... You haven't talked to Randall in a long time. Seize the moment, Kevin.
And Kevin just had this conversation with Randall before where he was like, I'm calling because what would Randall do? Now all of a sudden Randall's calling at the perfect time when Kevin is panicking. He's like, I got no time. I only have 22 hours. I'll call you later.
I think it must just be some sort of storytelling device where they're like, okay, let's find a way to set up the Kevin episode that's coming next week. This will be a great tease.
Yeah.
But, we'll transition over to the one big question I have after all of this, and that is, Randall gets this key to this place, and, it seems awesome. Who wouldn't want to have a place in Louisiana? Like, best food ever. But, it's, what happens to this sort of place now? Where does that go? And did Randall ask about other people maybe in Laurel's family? Because if he did, we didn't really get to see any of that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know, like, are Laurel's parents still alive? His grandparents? He's only 40. I mean, I'm 46, and my grandma just passed away this year at 91. So, I mean, they could absolutely still be alive. I mean, why not ask about anybody else?
Yeah, I felt when I was watching it sort of like, okay, the writers must be sort of inferring that because Randall has this place that everybody else in Laurel's, like, direct family must not be alive anymore. But like you were saying even before we came on, that's not necessarily 100% the case.
No, she may have told Hyde, this is for my son. If for any reason you ever run across him, he needs to have this.
Yeah, I just think it would have been nice to know a little bit more, because I want to see opportunities for Randall to go back down there potentially before everything is over. And yeah, I think seeing High is a reason enough to go down. I mean, he tells great stories. Apparently he cooks a really, really good fish. He seems like a nice guy. But, the more family, the better.
It may also just be a place to get away and go scream in the lake. And we're going to talk about that now, too.
All right, let's get into Randall in the darkness.
Okay, so the way that he's able to let go is he goes into the lake like his mom used to and scream it out, which was a really cool moment. I really liked seeing that. Did he need to be down in the buff to do it? Maybe. I mean, I assume that they were kind of going for this reborn kind of feeling where he was going to be able to come out of this lake and be like, I'm feeling healed. I am ready to move forward.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it, too. I mean, Randall is a braver person than me, by the way. I do not go outside at night. I'm blind during the daytime. I'm even more blind at night. I would never be able to find that water. I'm just saying.
I can't imagine how cold that water is at night. I'm also just saying.
I've got a word that I could say here that would be a major deterrent for Randall going in the water in the cold, but you can just think it. I'm not going to say it.
Okay, so then we're also now going to talk about the conversation that Randall had with his mother in the lake. So at first when I saw this happening, I was like, man, this scene is beautifully acted where Randall is getting a chance to, talk to his mother in his head. Immediately, that's what I thought it was. I didn't think that he was in there talking to a ghost, because that would make the show very different, that they've rooted this really in reality, and now all of a sudden it's very supernatural and there are ghosts in the lake. It would be weird for me. But then his mother touched him and touched his face, and it went from me feeling like, okay, this is in Randall's head, to there is a ghost in this lake and now she's touching him. So it was a little bit strange for me. I felt almost like he could have had this same moment and this same sort of realization, either talking to a photo in there, talking to a photo at the side of the lake after he screamed it out, sort of being like, I wish you were here, but this is how I feel, and having that same conversation. Because for me, before the touch, I was like, okay, I'm feeling all right about this. It feels like he's conjuring her up in his mind. And then there was a moment when she touched him where I was like, okay, this is starting to feel like could he be talking to a ghost in the lake? For me, I'm moving forward that it was in his mind, because if they actually did bring a ghost in the lake, something is unraveling with the show for me. It's very based in reality.
I've spent a lot of this video just in my head, sort of trying to roll around and kind of assemble the little things that I think they maybe could have done differently, because it's sort of like I see where you are with it, because the touching part of it was a little bit strange. And to me, I think the big issue I have with it is mostly the construction of it, because I think the performances were just out of this world, and it was emotional and heartfelt and all of those things. I think what I might have done is just maybe put in a line or two or something more that's sort of breaking down a little bit of Randall's own walls as to what this situation really is, and maybe cluing us in even more with dialogue that this is something that is existing fully all in his head, that it's not real, but it's something that he feels that he needs, because I think you can play around with the meta of it and do some really, really cool stuff. And This Is Us has done some really cool meta stuff before with Jack and with other characters where we've played out these what-if scenarios, but I think with those, they've always done a very good job of kind of clearly establishing the rules before we sort of get to them. And I think, to your point, the rules weren't exactly as clear in this moment. It was sort of spiritual. Maybe they were sort of playing into kind of the spiritual, almost supernatural sort of theme that exists within New Orleans and Louisiana. But I think if it was just a tiny bit clearer, I think it could have had just like even more of an impact.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a bit of a different show and all this time they've introduced more of those sort of supernatural elements, then it would have made a little more sense to me. I think it needed to be, for me, a little more clear that this was in his head. Because, yeah, for me, the moment that it went from they're this far apart to she's touching him, I'm like, whoa, okay, so this barrier has now changed. It's become physical, where before it was like, okay, this is probably in his head. Now it's real. I was like, oh dear, okay.
I read it in the moment. It's like, okay, Randall's just imagining her touching him, and that's sort of maybe where they're going with it. But
I'm sure that is where they're going with it. It has to be.
Yeah, I'm sure it has to be. But it is something where if you establish the rules earlier, then you don't have those questions, and then it's just sort of clear exactly what we're experiencing, what we're dealing with. And I just think this is a really, really great episode. But I think what happens is when you get a really great episode, you start to pick apart little things, because you want to sort of figure out, okay, how could it have been lifted to like that even greater level, where I think this is probably a top 10 episode of the show in my head. Like, maybe it could be top 3, top 2, if like this one or two things were switched around a little bit.
I'm just glad that moving forward, Randall is ready to move forward, because we've seen that Kevin is ready to move forward with his relationship with Randall, but it takes both of them. They were both in the wrong. They both said things. They both need to come to the table. They both need to apologize, and they both need to make amends. And Kevin has been, making some steps. He's not all the way there, but he's been making some steps, and Randall hasn't been ready yet. He's had these other things that are going on, everything that's now come up with High, and his mother has now passed, and all of this stuff. He just wasn't there yet. But that last scene, sort of in the car with Beth, he's smiling. He's like, I feel like I'm letting it go. The talk with his dead mom in his head, that's where we're landing with that.
Yes.
Where she was kind of like, this guilt will eat you up. This fear will eat you up. You gotta let things go. And Randall is a person who carries a lot of weight on his shoulders. He always has been that way. And that's probably a part of the reason why he has really bad anxiety. I'm like that too. I carry a lot. I have really bad anxiety too. That's why I like Randall and I relate to him a lot.
Yeah, I think it's why a lot of us do, because I think we've all been in emotional places that he has, and I think it is good that he's starting to find a little bit of peace. And, you sort of alluded to this, and we've seen a lot of comments on various videos in the past about it, that Randall needs to apologize more to Kevin, because Kevin has sort of been leading the charge in that direction, and maybe this will be just sort of the catalyst where that starts to change a little bit. I think we do need to see Randall show a little bit more remorse towards Kevin, like Kevin has started the show for Randall, and that opportunity can be there now.
Yeah, I think that hopefully not gonna drag it out too much. Some bad things were said by both of them, but they are brothers, and I think now that Randall has this closure, and now we've got everything that's going on with Kevin. I mean, Randall got on the phone. Kevin's said, my, fiance is now in the hospital giving birth. I'm not there, so I'm expecting the next episode that when Kevin shows up, Randall will be there, and I'm sure Kate will be there too.
I hope we get something that just gives us that communal This Is Us family experience. We've been waiting for a lot of that this season. But, overall, let's turn this over to you guys. Like, this is such a powerful episode. So many good moments. What stands out to you? Were there issues you had with any of the episode? Let us know. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give us a like. And if you want to support us further, we've got links in the description to the store, to our Patreon. And we'll see you here next time.